20 Minute Tim's flagship podcast 311. And I'm joined by my podcast pals, Martin Melly.
Yes.
And Stephen.
Good to be here.
And I am, of course, the host, Jamie. And what a weekend it was. I didn't see Rangers dropping points. I've got to admit, I didn't see them dropping points against Hibs. Even watching the game and how abject Hibs were, Melly, I did not see them dropping the points.
No, we were all watching it together, weren't we? And we're like, what is wrong with these people? Why can't they pass a ball? But Hibs just didn't look like getting anything out of the game. Then Rangers went down to 9 men. Well, 10 men. I was like, no really get much hope here. 9 men, I was like, still don't fancy it. And then for a last gasp stunner after a game, well, a lack of quality from Hibs throughout, but a last gasp stunner done it for us.
I think he's been very polite when he says lack of quality because Hibs were rubbish. That guy Rocky is absolutely terrible.
Quite literally a competition winner, as you were explaining to me before we came into the studio. Yeah, during that game, we were at our work that day. We were recording that very morning. A wee Patreon exclusive soon to come. So there's your tee up for the Patreon plug just after I've finished this sentence, which is going to end with the fact that I enjoyed Rangers dropping points in controversial circumstances, comma, and it was very enjoyable. That's the end of the sentence.
Patreon.com/20 Minute Tims, where you can get extra podcast videos and writing from us three if you like Celtic, if you like us. Patreon.com/20 Minute Tims. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, because the majority of people haven't subscribed. They just watch it organically. A couple of weeks ago, Chris Boy thought...
Watch it organically.
They just watch it organically. A couple of weeks ago, Chris Boy thought Morelos was the best player in Scotland. An unbelievable thing for Chris Boyd to say. In the pantheon of idiotic things Chris Boyd has ever said. But Morelos comes on for all of how many? Felt like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Throws a hand out, gets sent off, trudges off the pitch. Thank you and good night.
Andy Walker had serious problems with it, didn't he? He just couldn't see the infringement whatsoever. But Morelos was doing Morelos things. The irony being that everyone was crying, oh yeah, that's fine. All he did was raise an arm, but Jozo Simunovic was sent off for basically exactly the same thing on him a number of years ago. The Morelos thing, I know this is a weird way to start the podcast, but it was funny. It was very, very funny.
And we're going to segue. We're going to importantly.
First of all, lol at all of it.
Yes.
But Morelos, I can't help but shake off I can't shake off the feeling that he's going to turn into their Griffiths. And it's very similar trajectory. See, when you look at the records, they had great seasons to begin with, and then you get he scored 17 that season, right? He scored 15 that season. He's gradually getting fatter and fatter and scoring fewer and fewer goals, and he's becoming an absolute liability. It would be mental if they give him another contract.
I saw something. Now we know we like the Rangers fans' names for Celtic players. Now I can't think of any at the moment. Past Ange past the pot of glue, for example, right? When they do this, but a Celtic fan called him El All You Can Eat Buffalo, right? And I thought, you're so close, because just El Buffalo is fine. It's exactly the same. And I think El Buffalo is perfect, but Buffet.
Yeah, I don't know if either of you will be aware of this. This might be an exclusive review live on the podcast, but we have passed into the pantheon of shite patter puns. Someone, I don't think it was a Rangers fan in fairness, but someone on Twitter today called us 20 diminutive Tims.
I'm 6'2". Stephen's built like a fucking brick house and Melly's getting there.
Doesn't make sense. There's 3 of us. We're not 20 small Tims for the record there. But
and a massive overcoat. No, the reason we bring up the Rangers thing is because for the last couple of weeks we've been pointing to how poor the rest of the league have been performing, Melly, and we were really under the belief, probably the mistaken belief, that this league would probably come down to the games between us and them. But here we are. It's not even the end of August, and already Celtic are heading into a league game with the opportunity to go 2 points clear. Yeah,
and we didn't expect it, did we? Look, no. We didn't only seen a wee bit of the game, but I just didn't feel that Hibs were doing anything. I seen them play Hearts the other week and they got a last minute equaliser, but I just didn't see much from them at all. Martin Boyle's probably the only bit of quality they've got in there, and I still think it will ultimately come down to those games, because Celtic will possibly draw a game somewhere along the line as well. But when you look at it last season, 4 points and Celtic beat them home and away, so it kind of came down to that. I just want more from the league. I know Hibs done something for us, but it was against 9 men, lads.
I cannot start this podcast again with a rant about Scottish football. No. People have been incensed. People have been shouting things in the street at me. You beardy twat.
Oh, there
like
he goes, pug-nosed gimp. But you can say that about Hibs. You want a wee bit more quality in Hibs, but they did take the points off Rangers. We we introduced Hearts. We got Hearts at Celtic Park as he desperately tries to avoid an edit. and it's a tricky period now for Rangers, an important period for us, because we're playing them in a couple of weeks, and they're might potentially go into that game, and we're playing Dundee United between then and now.
A beleaguered Dundee United.
No, really up to much. So expect us to be going into that first Glasgow derby, Stephen, we're 2-point lead.
Yeah, well, it's a good start to the season. Celtic have got a 100% record through various challenges that we've come through so far. The game, which we're, I assume, coming on to now that we've got the Rangers stuff out of the way, was okay at the weekend. I remember thinking, like, we were recording our Patreon property at the match on the way back from the game. We were responding basically in real time, well, right after the game, on the way back from the game, and we're saying, like, it's just okay, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was just okay. And you catch yourself about to almost complain about a win, and you don't really want to do that, and you kind of ease back from complaining about a win. But then Melly, I'm giving a real peek behind the curtain here, Melly was at the press conference for us, and this was happening at exactly the same time. Melly then sent through the audio from the press conference so we could stitch it all together. And after we were saying, it was just okay, wasn't it? Basically, Joe Hart and Ange both came on that press conference and effectively said it was just okay.
Yeah.
It could have been better, but we're in a good spot just now. As we already said, we're 2 points clear at this stage of the season. It's a good position to be in, ahead of that game in particular.
Referring back to ourselves, I think it might be you, Stephen, that said that early on you didn't think that Celtic would see many of the same lineup. I can't remember exactly how you worded it here. I'm not trying to put you on this. Do you want to clarify your comments?
Well, it was over various debates on what level of squad we need. It was on the usual question you get about whose place would such and such take. If you're linked with a player, everyone says, whose place would they take? Who would you play him ahead of? And what I tend to say about that is that Celtic will very rarely play the same lineup twice in a row. It's not about the first 11, it's about the squad. And Ange goes and plays the same first 11 3 times in a row. What I said was, it will happen, but when it does happen, it will be a big thing. Someone will say, they've played an unchanged lineup here, but 3 times in a row. Absolutely at it, Ange.
This is after him saying he doesn't have a first 11 as well.
Yeah.
Further putting your comments, I'm talking sense here. And just blew it out the water.
How strong? I was having a wee think. How strong do you think this Celtic team is at the moment? Because in terms of strength and depth, I mean, it could be stronger than anything Brendan Rodgers had. And I want to clarify what I mean by that is once you dip out of the starting 11, as we might call it, other previous Celtic managers, and I remember us speaking about this on the Celtic podcast, not the Celtic podcast, on this very podcast, about Neil Lennon's team.
This is the Celtic podcast.
This is the Celtic podcast, don't it? It's about Neil Lennon's team. Like, once you get out of that starting 11 and you start dipping into the guys that are coming off the bench and filling in, it's not very good. I don't think Ange's got that problem, does he?
No, he definitely doesn't. Looking at the team that started and the 9 subs we had at the weekend, I can't remember a better squad. We only have Ideguchi out. Doubt he would have made the bench anyway. And when you're looking at the bench, well, every player probably could come on at some point there and do a job. It's Ralston, we've got Bernabe, fullbacks, Starfelt, played all last season. Then you're into the midfield and wide areas and up front, Giakoumakis comes on and scores. So I'm looking at it going, hold on a minute, the only one I'm worried about is James Forrest, and we're linked to a guy that's potentially going to come in and maybe replace him. So in my lifetime, I would probably say this is the strongest looking squad. It might not be the best squad, but the strongest in depth. If one player goes out, we've pretty much got 2 players for each position now. And it's not as if we've got like Martin O'Neill's time where we had that first 11 where your guys on like 20 to 30 grand a week, all of them, and they're all good players. And then after that was David Fernandez.
Exactly the name I was going to say. Exactly my go-to reference there.
With this team, it looks like, right, okay, you don't quite know, is it Turnbull, Hatate? There's players that could come in and out and you wouldn't be too downbeat about it. Starfelt, Jens, there's loads of competition there, and you're just like, this is a really good squad ready for this season, and not even complete yet by the sounds of it.
Well, further to there being players that you would have a lot of faith in coming off the bench and contributing, we've actually got a number of players there who can genuinely feel really aggrieved that they're not playing games at the moment. It's not just about, do you know what, I'd really like to find a little bit of game time for this guy, for that guy. There are at least 3 off the top of my head, maybe more, guys who you think would probably be 1 or 2 games away from the old cliche knocking the manager's door. I'm thinking Abada, Hatate. Hatate's just back from injury, but when you look at that squad on the day, you think, well, he's got a real case to be starting games in place of David Turnbull. You've got Carl Starfelt, who has gone from being a very established player to just can't get his place back at the moment. So
do you think that's what it is? Do you think it's Jens' place to lose?
Yeah, until such times as we're playing twice a week, I think things will totally change then. I think we're really on a bit of a roll just now. I don't really see any reason to be tinkering with the winning formula just now, but that goes out the window as soon as the fixture intensity goes up. It has to. That's the reason we've got so many quality players as well. You don't, as we've discussed so many times, you don't just pick a first 11 and stick to it all season. Meanwhile, you've got 8-9 players of very similar quality sitting on the bench doing nothing. All these guys will find game time. There are even players in the squad. Here's this week's token Albion Yeti mention. Doesn't even get in the squad. James McCarthy is nowhere to be seen as well. And I don't bring him up to criticise him or to use him as an example of weaknesses in the squad. I'm actually looking at that and thinking, James McCarthy's a good footballer. He is a good player. He's undeniably a good player. He could get a game for any other team in this league and many, many other teams down south and all that, but he can't get near this squad.
I've got a wee bit to say McCarthy in a minute, Melly, but you're signalling that you want to chime in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for example, if we're coming up to this Ross County away game in the League Cup, it's a couple of days before Rangers, and Stephen mentioned, if I was to say, like, we'll stick with Joe Hart and Cal McGregor, sort of the captains, the mainstays, but if I went Hart, Ralston, Welsh, Starfelt and Bernabe, McGregor, Mooy and Hatate, Abada, Forrest and Giakoumakis. That's a good team. That's like made up of the guys that are mainly on the bench at the weekend.
So when you're looking at, say, you mentioned them, Stephen, Turnbull and Hatate, who's the better player? Because I feel like there's still some players, I don't want to say they're off the ball, that's ridiculous this early in the season. Still some players to get up to speed. I think David Turnbull might fall into that bracket. So you're the manager. That's the 2 players we've got to pick. Who's getting your vote?
And that's a tough one just now. I feel like we've been having this discussion most weeks as well, because to me, there's not that much between them as footballers on paper in terms of their profile, in terms of their attributes. I don't think there's much between them. And I'm a big fan of David Turnbull, but he's been very disappointing this season so far.
Yeah.
It's only 3 games, but he has started 3 games in a row, and this is why we often talk about it as well. You don't get the run of games. Like, see if you're not at it, you're going to lose your place. That's just the nature of having a good squad. I think he was pretty poor against Hearts, if I'm honest. Turnbull, I'm really expecting a lot more from him. Hatate came on, and I don't know if Hatate was necessarily much better, but he's a lot more urgent, he's a lot more energetic, and he tries a lot more things than David Turnbull currently does. So that's probably going to edge him ahead of Turnbull ever so slightly. David Turnbull carries a lot of goal threat at times, but we haven't really seen that from him either recently. This has just come to me, so I'm not putting you on the spot, but did we have a "you must have forgot" for David Turnbull already this season? Quite possibly.
I think because some of his pre-season displays were quite good. Yeah. If you haven't heard already, it is Smooth Sack Summer. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're scaped from pubes to bum. This is the ad copy we are given. That's right, this is the summer to keep your balls cool while still looking hot with Manscaped. The leader in below the belt grooming is making sure we have a ball this summer by giving our pants partners everything they need to stay fresh. Dive headfirst into Smooth Sack Summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with our code TIMS. The Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 has everything you need to prepare that summer bod. Inside this package you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs and a travel bag to keep all your goodies in. Stephen, it's 2022. You cannot at any time be hitting the beach looking like a caveman.
Unacceptable. So come get a ball sack trimmer from your podcast mates. A ball sack trimmer for your scrotum shaved and shorn.
Right. That's manscaped.com/Tims for 20% off. And thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this podcast. Just on Turnbull and Hatate, Stephen said, 2 very, very similar in skill players but different approaches to the game. Melly, if you're the Celtic manager, how would you be rating Turnbull's so far? How would you be rating Hatate so far? What one would get your pick?
Well, I said I prefer Turnbull a few weeks ago. I just think he's more consistent. And
do you think he's too conservative though?
I don't know if he's too conservative.
Not conservative.
I definitely don't think he's that, and I hope he's not that. But I don't know. It's it's a hard one right now because Hatate's been out, but at the same time, when he played against Aberdeen, he wasn't great either in the first game of the season. I think he was great there. But it's not been great. It's a bit harsh because at the weekend there, I thought no Celtic player was bad, but none of them were really good either. And we strolled to a 2-0 win, so I'm not going to complain at all. I think it's just down to who's on form. And right now, Turnbull's doing okay, but this is the whole thing, the options we've got. Before last season, Turnbull played and that was it, and he had to play. This season, if he's not playing well, we've got two guys on the bench who can come on easily and do a job. So this is where the levels we've taken this squad up this season is. Like, you can afford to maybe not play well, but around that 60-minute mark, when you see substitutes warming up, you know there's a fair chance it's going to be you if you're not competing well.
Yeah, again, Starfelt, I think Starfelt has got every right to maybe not feel aggrieved, but he was the main man.
Oh, yeah.
High profile signing, expensive player. He comes over here, as you say, absolute stalwart in that Celtic team last season beside Cameron Carter-Vickers. Moritz Jens, and he comes and he impresses. I think Starfelt's the better player though. I think Starfelt's the better defender. We used to have to criticise Starfelt for looking uncomfortable in the ball. Somehow I think Jens looks slightly more uncomfortable in the ball.
Think so?
I think he does. He gets himself into positions sometimes and fangles, and I think you don't look the most comfortable. When he's going out with the ball, he does. But defensively, when he's got the ball at his feet, I think he doesn't so much. So who would you?
I genuinely don't know. I hate sitting on the fence in these matters, but I think they're both worthy of a place, and you just can't, because Cameron Carter-Vickers will play the vast majority of the games, quite literally, physically, and quite literally can't move him from the pitch. Starfelt, I think he's somewhat awkward on the ball. I think that has held him back a little bit in terms of his perception by the fans. I think it's almost like a weird
Sorry to talk over you, but I'm still sniggering. Only had 3 bad games of the season. That was enough for a lot of people at the beginning of the season when he first arrived.
Michael Stewart
I've written him off.
He, like Turnbull, is far too conservative. And by the way, can I just remind you, remember that interview or the bit of press thing that David Turnbull didn't know what expected goals are? Yeah. It's because he thinks they were brought on by immigration. That is a joke, by the way.
Wow.
No, foreign muck. But Starfelt, I think there's a weird perception. I wonder if it's kind of carried through for Starfelt that, see, when you look at centre-half pairings, you look at classic centre-half pairings, and Ferdinand and Vidic is the kind of classic 2000s one that everyone points to as maybe the perfect centre-half pairing. It doesn't really matter what you think of the team or English football or whatever, but you always look at it as like Vidic is the big tough, like,
ball winner,
broken-nosed ball winner guy, no nonsense, and Rio Ferdinand is the footballer and all that. Do you look at a pairing like Carter-Vickers and Starfelt, and you just sort of judge them because Carter-Vickers is so like big and solid and all that? You think, well, he must be subconsciously, maybe he must be the big ball winner guy, and maybe Starfelt's the footballer, the guy that can stride out of defence, and he's not that. He's not really that. So does that kind of almost like subconsciously disappoint people when he can't really do that? But that, I think he's actually a very good defender. Apart from that, he's very good in the air. He wins a lot in the air.
And the problem is as well, because Carter-Vickers is so assured, it's so calm, nothing phases the guy. He's excellent. It's when you're playing right next to him and you fumble on the ball for a second, people aren't used to seeing that when it's come to Carter-Vickers.
So in truth, I don't know. I think Jens looks okay in the ball as well, to be honest. I think he looks okay. I don't think I have had many alarm bells from him. I think when you look at the vast majority of the passes by the defence, and that's a theme for Celtic for years, the centre-halves make most of the passes in the team. Yeah. And it's always kind of in between the centre-halves or to McGregor or to the full-backs. There's nothing really particularly adventurous about it, but that's absolutely fine because you've got Callum McGregor sitting there. So if they're okay on the ball, I don't think you necessarily need properly, Christopher Ayer was quite good at it, like striding forward with the ball. I don't really think necessarily we need that at the time. I think you just need to be decent on the ball. Kind of like the thing we've spoken about with Joe Hart. But it doesn't have to be Ederson or Alisson or Manuel Neuer or anything like that. He just has to be able to competently pass it to players 10 yards away from him.
Do you think Christopher Julian's getting any right to be aggrieved? Because he could be looking at Moritz Jens and going, but
Spider-Man meme.
Because they're very similar, not just in appearance obviously, but in the way they approach the game, and they're very similar players.
Yeah, they are. It's just Jens is Ange's man. He's brought him in. He's went from last year, and he's a lot younger than him. Julian, the squad's moved on from Julian. Even Joe Hart in that press conference talked about, well, if it wasn't Jens and Carter Vickers playing it, Bale Welsh and Starfelt, he didn't even give Julian a mention. So the squad's moved on for Julian. With Jens, it's got to the point now where Celtic are like sort of gearing towards this big week we've got coming up where we play Rangers and then we start the Champions League. And for all, Carl Starfelt, I think, is probably a better defender than what I've seen with Jens. Jens just looks a wee bit more comfortable on the ball for me, but I'm still not sure who's the better one. But I'd be very wary of just putting Starfelt back in because I do feel it takes him a wee bit to get up to speed. So I feel this Ross County game would be ideal for him to get into that and then build from there. It's not as if he's been dropped or anything like that. He simply was injured and couldn't do the pre-season, and Welsh came in, done well, then Jens has come in and done well. So everybody that's sitting on the bench may feel hard done by, but they're looking at the guys ahead of them and going, they've not done anything wrong either for me to take over. Like, Ralston had played a lot more this time last year. He contributed significantly, but you look at Juranovic and go, he's just doing well there now. Like Greg Taylor, Bernabe's not got a sniff yet. So all these guys, we're just trying to get them game time here and there, even though like this is unheard of for us to be playing one game a week for the first 4 games of the seasons. Quite literally, Celtic haven't done this ever. Basically in my lifetime, we've always had qualifiers of some sort. So it's different for everyone, but having a squad finally when we don't have these games, you're like, why did we always do this?
Jens looks like he's going to score in every game as well. At the moment, he's already got to it. He had the goal chopped off against Hearts, which was fair enough. I assume that I think it was Taylor was offside from that. But then he really should have scored as well. He had a wild effort from about 7 or 8 yards or something like over the bar. But in fact, he is a centre half and he's already got 2 goals, but he does carry an enormous threat by the looks of it as well. So, I'm perfectly comfortable with his inclusion at the moment.
Since we're doing him or him, another position, and you touched on it in the game, Stephen, Kyogo has contributed 3 goals this season without looking spectacular. Yeah. And every day my love for Giakoumakis grows. And I think the big man we need to start him. I would be very surprised if he didn't start against Dundee United. I want to start the guy.
Thing is, it's
he
very
deserves
difficult.
A start.
It does, but it's very difficult to look at a game like that. Kyogo scored an early goal, Giakoumakis scored a late goal, and worry about having to change it because it's kind of working exactly how it's supposed to.
I kind of think we look a bit more dangerous with Giakoumakis on the pitch.
It's highly debatable. He should have more goals by now as well because he's missed some big chances. It's kind of like exactly what I've said about Jens. He looks like he could score all the time. He's missed a couple of sitters and maybe should have done a little bit better with some headers. There was one cracking cross from Taylor. It was good again, really good again.
Man of the match, come on.
Kyogo in the stadium.
I know, come on.
I don't know how that came about, but Taylor set Giakoumakis up for a header he maybe should have done better with. I'm splitting hairs here. I think he's a guy who carries a massive threat, but I'm just unmoved by the situation at the moment. I'd like to see him get more game time as well. I've said it on a couple of podcasts now, but it's so popular, so popular. A guy like he's the biggest crowd pop apart from goals of the day.
I think we've got 2 equally talented strikers there. That's what it is. And I find when Giakoumakis came on, I don't know how to articulate it in football lingo, right? But he's easier to play with. I think Kyogo quite often plays off the shoulder. We need to thread the ball through for him, or we need to play a really good timed pass, or we need to get a pinpoint cross in for him. And a lot of times these things don't come off. Like how many times have we seen Kyogo run out of space with the ball, or miss the cross, or he's just a fraction too late or a fraction too early. Whereas Giakoumakis, like, you don't need to be quite so accurate, quite so pinpoint with your play. He's going to battle it, he can hold it up, he can bring other people into play. He's very, very dangerous. He seems to strike a bit of panic into the centre of these defences.
This is going to sound like an absolutely horrendous comparison, but is he, in that everything you're describing there, is he kind of our Marouane Fellaini? Because that was kind of how he was being used for Everton as well. See, if you just lump the ball up, he will batter 3 players out the way just to take that down in his chest.
But what I mean is, it's not even all the time lump. See, if you play it and it's a yard or 2 shy, sometimes Kyogo's already up the run, so he can't change direction that quickly. For talking's sake, this Giakoumakis, so that's still mine. I'm still having that ball, you know.
Yeah, well, I get what you mean, because he is easier to hit Giakoumakis, isn't he? You can play it into the channel, or you can play it to his head or chest, and he will get in front of defenders. With Kyogo, he's always making that run in behind. He's always sort of ahead of the players. Like he's, I don't know, maybe more intelligent runs than the players are good enough to play sometimes. I think if you put him in a team, easy to say this, but with Kevin De Bruyne, I think he'd bag goals because he'd be able to find the ball. But
bag goals with Kevin De Bruyne.
Exactly. But if you look at it the other
would.
There we go.
Don't know about that. If you look at it the other way, is Giakoumakis looking so effective when he comes on because Kyogo has ran these defenders ragged and they're just like, oh, come on, man. And you're swapping like for like honest. Because Kyogo, he's a handful. He's always in there. He's always just away. I think he's just one game away from just busting this season. Yeah. It could be any game now. I think he's going to bag a couple of goals. And even with the way Celtic play, sometimes our strikers don't do much because they're told keep that defence back to create the space for everybody else. And Kyogo does it perfectly. I mean, if he's the only striker of the year, yet when Turnbull played, which was a good ball by Turnbull, Turnbull plays it through for Maeda and he crosses it. Kyogo's there. The same last week at Kilmarnock, gets the early goal and sets Celtic apart from these teams. So I don't really care who starts now. I still think Kyogo's the one to start for me. But
a bit of chat about Hearts. I'd realise, that Hearts did play midweek.
Yeah.
But some of this going down with cramp after half an hour stuff is foolery.
I feel because we've been speaking about it a lot, I'm focusing on it and noticing it. So we had their goalkeeper twice in the first half. Once he got warned by the referee, 20 minutes gone, they're 1-0 down, to hurry up with the goal kicks. And another time, twice he done this as well. The ball boy threw the ball onto the pitch straight away for him. Pretended he didn't see it and went to get the other ball, and the ball boy's like, oh, sorry. Twice he done that. And then we had Liam Boyce, when Joe Hart went to take a goal kick, just pick the ball up and throw it over his head and get booked. You're getting beat, mate, against a team that finished 2 places ahead of you. One of the biggest games of your season, and you're time wasting 1-0 down in the first half and getting booked.
Yeah, the time wasting at 1-0 is pretty pathetic. But what I thought was more pathetic is Giannelli. Right, I don't watch a lot of Hearts. I don't know if Giannelli is normally good. I don't know if he normally plays football for a living or they drafted him in from elsewhere, right? But that guy was the most didn't he want to be there guy in the whole world. I think it might have even been the first header or the first couple of minutes. He just knew he was getting nothing out of Carter Vickers, so he's pulling up. He mishit a shot. He pretended he's injured. One teammate got tackled right and went down with an injury in the opposite half, and I looked at Giannelli to see what he was doing, and he just hit the deck as well. I'm like, this guy just doesn't want to be here at all.
At a certain point, it's Hart's fault, though. It's not his, because if he's shattered, even if he's not, if he's just choking to get out of there, and he literally sits down, think that's obviously the signal going to get me off, going to sub me off. If you just lie down in the middle of a football pitch unchallenged, please sub me off. They didn't. They just let him lie there and then he get back up and play it again. But that early on was when it's quite a big chance. Unlikely he's going to score from that angle against Joe Hart, but he shot and he went wildly across goal. But he did that thing. Now when you trip up in the street, you look back at the thing you trip over, you swear at the pavement. So I think he did that thing that footballers do when they've just completely arsed something. He stood there with his hands on his knees, just kind of hunched over a wee bit for ages. I was like, he's kidding on, he's injured. And it basically didn't let up for 90 minutes or however long was left at that point.
We were talking about Celtic's options. There's a guy that signed for the club a couple of weeks ago, and I just want to see what he can do. I feel like, Aaron Mooy's had minutes, and I was talking to you, we were sitting next to each other at the game, Stephen, and he comes on and he seems to play the easy option, and not just the easy option, the easiest option at all times. And he's been seen to he's been brought on to see the game out. That's kind of what I feel like his role is. So he sits in midfield, just takes the ball, just recycles it, 4-yard pass, 6-yard pass, and that's fine, right? Well, that's all well and good. McCarthy can do that. Giakoumakis presumably could do that. Those are 2 players who we've already got in the books to fulfil that role. And I don't think that Aaron Mooy was brought to Celtic just to do what Giakoumakis and James McCarthy can do. He's probably on a decent whack, as you mentioned, Stephen, just prior to recording. And he's like 2-footed. He's supposed to be a skillful footballer. He's supposed to be able to play intuitive and creative passes. And I want to see a wee bit more for the guy. It's your first couple of days at your new work. Do you know what I mean? Show the fans what you can do. He must be itching as well and as you say, with Giakoumakis coming on when the defences are tired, he's coming on whenever he's knackered. He's got the run of the place. Ping something, do something, show something, have a shot. ping a pass for the outside the foot for 40 yards. Excite me.
You just weren't excited for the sake of it?
No, I don't want excited for the sake of it, but he's a new player. He's supposed to be showing the fans a bit of something. This is why I'm here, I'm the man. But not just like 4 yards bump, cheers bump, no breaking sweat. Come on, Aaron.
He's coming on at 1-0, Celtic are up.
No excuse for him not to show a bit of pizzazz then, is there?
I'm not bothered about it. I think he's coming
on.
on.
And all that.
Just do a David Dunn in the middle of the
watch this and then
remember that trick Kanchelskis did against Ayr United?
I stood in the ball.
There was that one, right?
No, the fake one.
He just spun around. The ball was ahead of him, and he just spun around on the spot and continued to chase the ball, and then ran it out of play. What a reference for the kids that was. 90s Andre Kanchelskis played for Rangers at one point.
I just want to see him do something. Stephen, do you get where I'm coming from, or are you just quite happy with him being sort of an NPC?
An NPC. It depends what he's been put on the pitch to do. If he's been sent out there to just keep it simple, keep the ball ticking over, relieve the pressure a wee bit. He had a quite timely interception towards the end of the game. I think he took it off Barry Mackay. Barry Mackay tried to kind of drop the shoulder and go past him, and he just nicked the ball off him and triggered a Celtic attack. That was fine. Most of it was fine. There was one ball he overhit, but it's because he was under a wee bit of pressure and he just basically played it into an area to relieve the pressure on it again, and Carter Vickers had to run back a wee bit for it. It was all right. It depends. If that's what he's been sent out there to do, to just sort of see out the game, yeah.
Would you question that signing though? Because we've already got two players in theory who should be able to do that anyway.
They should, but what I'm taking from McCarthy's involvement or lack thereof recently is that he has basically been deemed completely useless to this squad. I've already said on this same podcast that I think he's a very good player, but for whatever reason he's of no use to this squad whatsoever, because Ideguchi has been injured for weeks now, and McCarthy still isn't anywhere near it. So if those players are all in the same kind of bracket, McCarthy's miles down the pecking order. So there must be a reason for that, whether it's Ange just doesn't fancy him. If Mooy is almost identical to McCarthy in every way, but Ange just prefers him, then that's why he's been brought to the club for whatever reason. I think, is it maybe sort of colouring the perception of him from your point of view that he is a new signing, and as you've already said, you just want to see a wee bit more. Say, for example, Beaton or McCarthy came off the bench and put in that exact same performance, people would probably be raving about it. Beaton came on and just shored up that defence. And
does that know why people are angry at Beaton? Because but partly that because he was mostly shit. But it is the new signing thing, and I believe there's more in the locker.
I'm sure there is.
I'm sure there's more.
Don't forget, he didn't have a pre-season either. He is Stephen. Weeks and weeks behind.
Now, Melly, this is like QI. I should have a thing that goes meh, because when Steve and I were talking about Mooy at the game, Stephen said he's going to have this thing follow him about all season where people say he didn't have a pre-season. Now, we didn't know you'd be first to bring it up, but you did say that, didn't you, Stephen?
I did.
Every player does mention it, but
that's not. I must jump in there. That's not to say it's not important.
Yeah.
What I was envisioning, to give that full context, is that he gets the kind of Hatate treatment, and that people are still talking about it months and months later.
I'll not be mentioning it in October or whatever, but 2 weeks into his career, I think it's all right to mention, and I think he does look a wee bit rusty right now, but if he's coming on and just getting himself into games, I'm happy with it.
There was a couple of red cards in the Rangers game, and the refs obviously had it in for teams of that persuasion, because there was a couple of red cards in the Celtic game. Robbie Neilson fuming about it. Who was it? Robbie Neilson, Stephen, that said you don't send people off in 90 minutes?
It was Ricky Foster.
Is that a new rule?
Don't call me Ricky Foster. It is a new rule where bookings don't count in the last minute. You simply get to do whatever you want. Ricky Foster said that. Sorry, Richard, whatever. He said that on Sports Scene, that there was a covering player.
Don't let him see this because he'll fly for you.
This is specky.
Sorry, just while we're on the topic, one of the best things I've ever heard was when Richard Foster was on loan at Thistle. Did you see that video that went viral?
He was nearly fighting with a fan or
something. He nearly fight with a fan. Do you know what he said to the fan?
No.
I'm not taking that for a Thistle fan. He's playing for Thistle. So I'm not having that for a Thistle fan.
Oh, degrading to football fans.
You're hard. Anyway, carry on.
Foster's point was that this is specifically for the Abada incident where Sibic was sent off for his second yellow. Foster said that because there was a covering player, then it didn't really count as a foul because there was a
Makes no
covering player.
difference.
I mean, that's his fault. Surely, if there's a covering player, let him cover. If he's a covering player, to say that because there's a covering player, you could have just let them away with it. There's only a minute to go, so don't book him. But it's the same guy, the same sort of level of punditry that will be calling for consistency next week when there's a similar incident. Oh, the refs are never consistent and all that. To me, they were 4 across the 2 red cards, both double bookings. They were 4 of the easiest, most inarguable bookings you will ever see on a football pitch. You could teach that in like referee classes, basically. Though that's what a booking looks like. Yeah. None of them were even remotely debatable. It's just because
Robbie Neilson said they were in it, and I'm sure he said we were in it until the ref set our players off.
All those shots on target you had.
You were still playing the game, yes, but creating chances. No, there was a point in the start of the second half where Celtic weren't in complete control and Hearts had maybe 4 or 5 corners in a short space of time, but Celtic dealt with them all easily enough and they didn't have a single chance from it. But is this just a sympathy thing where you don't send players off because it's the last minute or they've already had one sent off? That's not how you referee games. That is how we sit here and complain because we go, why did you not book that guy earlier for a booking that was, and then he can't do the second one? Now the referee is doing exactly what we ask and he's telling them not to do that. I don't get this argument.
Almost like we're supposed to feel guilty for it because we wanted our players. It's like an extension of the manager thing. Oh, you never want to see a guy lose his job. You never want to see a man sent off in the last minute. It's a shame for the guy. So it is. No, he's quite literally not doing his job. They're bringing down players twice.
Is there ever a good time to send someone off? Would a pundit or a manager ever agree that there is a good time to send a guy out? In fact, in many ways,
last minute is the best
time to send them off is in the last minute. Because if you send them off in the first half, the argument would be, well, I had to play the whole second half with 10 men, right? So that then it doesn't count. So the second half, it's well, we were getting back into the game, but so stop your moaning, Robbie Neilson. They were absolutely and utterly deserved.
Yeah, and as you said, I was doing the press thing after, and somebody he said about strong referees, and it was harsh and all that. No, that way I was sitting, I was looking about to see. Is everybody else hearing this? As if, have I watched something different out there? It's just pure deflection from him. I think he's always been a moany bastard. We know that. He does it every time. He goes under the radar for it, I think. But he's got a big game during the week, so I think it will just be trying to take as many positives in. See if they hadn't have got a man, or if they only had one guy sent off, I don't think he'd have mentioned it, but it's the fact they get 2, he can point to that and go, we had 2 men sent off. Like, mate, you didn't create a single thing. Even when you brought on your subs, nothing, not a shot on target. Joe Hart, nothing to do the whole game apart from get the ball at his feet. And I get it this time with Hearts, I'm not going to have a massive go at them because this is sandwiched in between two huge games for them, but this is the team in 3rd place, and for Celtic to go out there and win and not really get out of second gear, it just shows like how good we are right now, because I'm looking at that Celtic team and going, I might have set up the goal but could have been better. Jota didn't have his smashing game that he's had in all 3 of them. Kyogo scored, but I could have done more. In the midfield, I could switch them about. O'Reilly should have scored. You know, like all the Celtic's big players, didn't play badly. Didn't really need to show up for Celtic to go out and comprehensively win a game against the 3rd best team in the country. Cantor.
O'Reilly absolutely loves killing off moves that would have been goal of the season. Then he absolutely loves it. That's about the 3rd time I've said this season, but there's always like free-flowing moves of about 18 passes that come to Matt O'Reilly and he fluffs it straight into the keeper's hands. He absolutely loves it. But apart from that, he was perfectly just all right.
I'm actually waiting for his season to start as well, Matt O'Reilly's.
Yeah.
Just goal-wise, I'd say.
He's a good player, but he just needs to get on the score sheet. I tipped him. I thought he would do it against Hearts.
To an extent, it's probably the same with Maida as well. He probably just needs a goal or 2 to kickstart his season. But I think...
Do you agree with the criticism that's been coming Maeda's way?
No, not really. I know a lot of people want to bad it in, and I can totally understand the reasons for that. It's because he scores a lot of goals, and I can't really sit here and go, but see, goals though, they're actually overrated. I'm not going to sit there and do that, but Maida he's so valuable to the team. Yes, I do concede that he could be chipping in with more goals, but he set one up at the weekend there, which gave Celtic a platform on which to build just a game, a controlled, if slightly underwhelming performance against a decent team
last week as well.
Yeah, exactly. So he also, I'm sure he chased back and won the ball back for early chance for Kyogo. He chased it down on the right wing, gave it to McGregor. McGregor fed in Kyogo, and that was the one Kyogo went through and just took a touch, took a heavy touch past the keeper. So all these things are very, very valuable. And again, I'd point to the fact that yes, Celtic have a lot of possession, they have a lot of chances, a lot of territorial advantage in Hearts' half, but it's because of guys like that. And it's not just him. It's not just him. It's Greg Taylor. Jota's good at it as well. Kyogo. They're all good. They're all competent pressers. They all know what they're doing. But Maida's key to that at the moment. You can play without Maida. You could make the change, bring Abada in, and you would still play very, very well, but you would lose just a few percentage points on that intensive press.
Yeah, it won't be until Maeda's out the team we really see, wait a minute, maybe we do miss him because of what he does off the ball and all that. But maybe I can understand why people want to see a bit more on the ball, a bit more quality. But just thinking there when you were talking, Stephen, if we do bring in this Haksabanovic, you're looking at Maeda maybe being pushed a wee bit down, and then it's going to be between him and Maeda for that place. I mean, when we're talking about squad and how we're looking so good, and we're bringing in another guy who you think's going to come in and be one of the first subs or be starting, you're like, this is good, lads.
We will, of course, have there we go. I thought I was going to get him. Haksabanovic. We will have him. Is that not even close, is it?
Yeah, there was a couple of letters round the wrong way. Haksabanovic, I believe.
Haksabanovic, there we go. We will have him laughing at me. It's supposed to be my mates. It's supposed to be helping me through this.
Colleagues.
Unbelievable. At least we can start on him. Right, anyway, so Shad will be joining us, and I just wonder if maybe there's he can maybe play number 10, he can anywhere across the front three, quite a versatile player, if that's the case. But like you say, if he came in, I thought Abada might be the one struggling for game time. I said that to you as well, Stephen, the football. If we get another winger in, I can see Abada dropping down, and of course there's still a use for James Forrest.
Mikey Johnson as well, still can't get a load move for love nor money.
He'll be. My prediction is he'll be gone. McCarthy will be gone. Julian will be gone by the end of the window. By this time,
a Yeti contract extension, triggering a 1-year extension.
Imagine there was just on the subject of Hibs and Rocky, they ended up getting him by accident. They loaned him and then they try to send him back to his parent company. Imagine we've got some hidden clause, a Yeti's contract, an extra year. The Bobo Balde gets us with one of those. Good thing we've got Champions League money coming in to pay for it.
Oh, aye.
The draw is this week. We can officially start to get excited about it. We can officially start to hear the music, the Champions League music, the draw very quickly, followed by the first set of matches. It's not a dream anymore, Melly. It's happening.
It is, and I'm really looking forward to it, thinking about Celtic in the Champions League. But Celtic first getting the Champions League, 2001 was it? For the first time, and 20 years near enough. And you're going, well, have we been in it as much as we should? No, but we want to be a Champions League team. We want to be one of those teams that's always in it. But right now, it's going to, no matter what draw we get, it's going to be tough. But rack your brains. When did Celtic last win? If I could say it properly. When did Celtic last win a Champions League game at Celtic Park? It's been a long time. I think, if I can get it right, 9 years. We beat Ajax 2-1 in a game that was... Really? I think we were already out by that point. So, Celtic need to maybe doing better with this. We're finally getting into here on our own, off our own back, not having to qualify. We need to sort of cement our place now and go push on in here. It's going to be very difficult no matter what group we get. And I know it's pathetic to say, but I'm just buzzing to be there, man. The prestige it brings and everything about it is class. But I'm really hoping Celtic can go and just win a bloody game.
Well, this wasn't on the agenda, but what's your favourite thing, this favourite small Champions League detail about it? Because mine is the patch on the jersey. I love that Champions League patch on the jersey. You're just like, this is the big time.
The ball.
Yeah.
Just try to think of one.
There isn't any other one. That's it.
Yeah, the wee thing they wave in the middle.
It's got the music. The big flappy ball. That's it. Mine's the patch on the
music
jersey.
Again.
The music.
There's my shot.
Why don't you pick the patch in the back of the strip?
Didn't know there was one, but that's mine.
Here we go. I've got him.
Always said that.
The problem is the last Champions League outing was 5 years ago, and we get absolutely slapped about by Paris Saint-Germain on 2 occasions.
Was it
5-0 and 7-1?
Ended it with 4 straight defeats, didn't it? 4 straight heavy defeats.
Worst defensive record.
We beat Anderlecht 3-0 away.
Aye, that's right. Beat Anderlecht away and then lost to Anderlecht on the last game. So is that the last Champions League game then?
Yeah, it was a 1-0 loss to Anderlecht.
Losing to Anderlecht. It was a common criticism, a common valid criticism of the Peter Lawwell tenure about how, yes, Celtic have been hugely successful, unprecedented success and all that, but Europe wasn't good enough.
No.
We've had a couple of things in there. There was obviously Seville. It's a good results peppered in there. There was Man City, there was Barcelona, of course. There was others.
Yes.
But overall, Europe hasn't been good enough the last 20 years for
even
Celtic.
last 10 years, that's 10 years this year since we beat Barcelona.
So it is, yeah. So Lazio was very impressive, actually. I knew that was another one I was looking for.
Both under Neil Lennon.
Of course. And the thing, the very, very tedious stat that follows Celtic around is not having won a knockout tie after Christmas since 2004 or something like that, right? So you can't attach that to the current squad because half of them were in primary school or something at the time, so that's ridiculous. But I'd love for these things to be dispelled. I'd love for these things to be evaporated at some point. I don't expect Celtic to go out there and just put all the rights or put all the wrongs right of the last 20 years of European competition. I think that would be asking too much. I think it's good to get there. And the thing I've been saying all along about the Champions League is we've been away so long. It'd be like going into a pub that you used to go into years ago, and you go in and everybody's different. You kind of walk in thinking, I'll be kind of the same. All our old pals over there. Nobody's there anymore. So I don't really know what to expect going into the Champions League. So I'm really I'm sort of nervously excited about it.
I'll tell you why I'm nervous, because I don't see Ange changing his approach too much. Obviously, we'll talk about this coming up to the games, but I don't see Ange changing his approach too much. And I think that the world of European football, even 5 years ago, has moved on massively. Do you know, we were talking about turbo elite clubs of the time, and we were looking at these clubs and going, there's no way we could ever compete with them. But that bracket still exists. But when you're looking at even pot 1 and pot 2, you're looking at the teams in pot 2 and you're like, what hope have you got against some of these teams?
Liverpool and Chelsea and all that.
I've got the pots here. Let me read them out. I hate doing live readings out because it's really boring. Here's pot 1, right? I'll be very quick with it. Madrid, Frankfurt, Man City, AC Milan, Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain, Porto and Ajax. I mean, I'd say pot 2 might have more stronger teams in there, because Eintracht Frankfurt, Porto, you might be able to get something out of those guys.
Too fearful there, yeah. Good teams, obviously, but nothing fearful in that.
What's your pick out of those two? If you got to hand pick one of those teams, Melly.
Frankfurt.
Difficult to see past that, isn't it? But for very obvious reasons, isn't it? We could
bring the trophy and all that. Come on,
pipe them up the Celtic way.
We could all go along in our Frankfurt shirts as well that we all bought at the end of last season.
Pipe them up the Celtic way. Get all the cliches out. Let them train at Lennoxtown beside us.
Only time I will allow half and half scarves if they play Frankfurt as well.
Oh yeah, Frankfurt for the patter and the points. Next up, this is what I mean by pot 2. Liverpool, Chelsea, Barcelona, Juventus, Atletico Madrid, Seville, Leipzig and Spurs. Oh,
good grief.
That's horrible. I mean, for me, Spurs, just because I feel like we've played all the other ones in my lifetime, and I don't think we've ever played Spurs in Europe before.
Spurs, because they've got like cheese rooms and fancy like automatic taps for beers and all that.
Do they have a cheese room?
That was the chat at the time.
Well, that explains it, because I saw a Spurs podcast called The Cheese Room. I'm like, why have they called it that? So they've okay.
I'd quite like Sevilla there. I think that'd be a good a tie. They'll probably beat us, but a decent enough game, and get back to Seville and all that.
Get back to Seville. And finally, pot 3, you could have Dortmund, Red Bull Salzburg, Shakhtar Donetsk, Inter Napoli, Sporting Lisbon or Bayern Leverkusen. I probably want Napoli there.
That'd be lovely, wouldn't it?
Jeremy Frimpong derby once again for the Leverkusen.
Oh, the Leverkusen just for the patter. So the Champions League, we will do a live reaction to the Champions League draw when it comes out. We'll probably wait till after it, because that thing's a fucking palaver.
Right.
You're just pulling balls out of jug and it takes forever, man.
They still do that thing where they walk along like platforms and all that. They've got like models walking about for hours, and there's like old footballers standing there and they can't open the balls and all that.
It's only entertaining when you get a footballer, because you know sometimes it comes out and it's like in French or whatever. It's whatever. I think they do it in French, and you get an English footballer like Anton Ferdinand who can't pronounce.
Oh, was Ashley Cole?
Ashley Cole,
How'd he get in there? Anton Ferdinand. Who invited this guy?
Anton Ferdinand. Ferdinand. I just picked him
St Mirren stopper, Anton.
token English footballer. I don't know why he's the first one that came to my mind. Maybe because you said Rio earlier on. I didn't want to pick the same one as you. But yeah, you're quite right. They had Ashley Cole doing exactly that.
So it says here we've got Ferdinand. Come on through.
Did he play for St Mirren, did he?
Did I?
Oh, he turned up for St Mirren. Anyway, on that bombshell, on that Anton Ferdinand shaped bombshell, we will wrap up this podcast. This podcast was sponsored by our friends at Football Prizes, footballprizes.co.uk. Use code TIMS for 10% off. They have all sorts of fantastic Celtic related memorabilia and prizes there. Check that out. But most of all, thank you for watching and listening.